it's such a tricky game, man. Like, cause you got a lot of people that know a lot, but at the same time, nobody knows anything, you know?
Oh no, I've actually never listened to that song fully through. I just heard that quick sample and thought this is the energy I want to bring to How to Reinvent Yourself. It's fun, got a little groove, a little vibe. Anyway, so I've never heard that part of the end. But anywho, welcome to How to Reinvent Yourself. This is an ongoing series that I've been doing here in the YouTube space, but I am transitioning into a live streaming format for reasons I'll get into a little bit later. But first, at the top of the year, and at the start of a new season of the show, I'm officially calling this episode 1 of season 2. Although we have some unfinished business with season 1 because next month, February, will be the 1 year anniversary. I dropped the first episode of How to Reinvent Yourself on February 22nd of 2025. And so next month will be the 1 year anniversary. And I'm going to use that time to reflect on what I've learned thus far in this first year. Not just in my journey of really leaning into my creative identity, but also just doing so in the YouTube space and what it has been and what I have learned in the first year as a YouTuber. As you can see, as I mentioned, I've graduated to the live stream, although at the beginning of this stream, we had a bit of a technical difficulty. That's a lesson learned. I tried to do some slick at the last minute, like, oh, this could be a cool little intro. And then the whole intro that I rehearsed and had down and ready to go got tossed because an unexpected thing happened. But that's kind of the whole point of this series, right? The whole point of the How to Reinvent Yourself series is to show the messy middle in real time. So, as a quick review for folks who maybe are new to the series, um, it really started as me thinking about I wanted to get in the YouTube space and I had all these ideas for the message that I wanted to share and the way that I wanted to look and the production and this whole concept. And as I quietly worked on that and I continued to try to push for that, I kept running into these roadblocks. And I would keep saying, okay, well, let me figure this out and then we'll go. And let me figure this out. And I kept pushing the date back. Let me figure this out and then we'll go. And what it turned into is me pushing it back so many times that I became frustrated with myself because ultimately the point was to get on this platform and share, right? The point was to share. And I kept letting the production and the idea that I have or what it was going to look like, I kept letting that get in the way of actually doing the thing. And so the first episode is, the is that, production was never the purpose, right? That was the sort of impetus of the first episode. And that was what got me to How to Reinvent Yourself. Because you know what? Stop trying to have it all figured out before you do it and just do it and let the people see you in process. That was ultimately what became of the whole idea. So I launched the first episode in February of 2025. And as we come up on 1 year, I want to share with you so much that I've learned on the journey of leaning into the creative process, starting before you believe you're ready, trusting that intuitive voice that says move, right? And everything that I've learned, right? I always say action breeds clarity. And I'm going to tell you so much clarity from just starting. So I want to round up that wisdom and I want to use the 1 year anniversary of the show to revisit that. And I want to make a very special announcement because, as is always the case, it's never just about me. There's always a blessing in it for me, but it's never just about me. And so I want to make sure that I'm continuing to share in all the ways that I know that I can, to support you on your journey in case you find yourself reinventing yourself, right? Right. Maybe not as a creative or in the same way that I am, but I do believe that some of the insights and revelations that have come along this journey have certainly been things that are useful well beyond my personal journey and feel a lot more universal, right? If I could extract the wisdom and share that with you. So that is what the focus of next month will be. I'm bringing that all that up to say next month will kind of be like the official closing episode of season 1 of How to Reinvent Yourself, but we're jumping ahead a little bit and calling today's stream the first episode of season 2. So again, it's the messy middle, right? It's figuring it out along the way, and it doesn't always necessarily happen linearly in a straight line and in a pretty perfect um, process, right? And so we're kind of jumping around a bit. We'll close out season 1 officially next month on the 1 year anniversary, but today we are kicking off season 2. And if you have been following this journey, then you might recall that last month in December, the episode was kind of about just navigating the shame because I missed November and all the stories that came up when I didn't show up for the commitment that I made and all the reasons why I started to have that sort of internal chatter that told me, and this is why you never get things done. And this is why, all the stuff that comes up when you're in the messy middle. And there are challenges and roadblocks that sometimes make us feel like we want to quit, right? And a mantra that I have for myself is this is the part where most people quit. And that helps me both validate how hard it is, but also remind myself that I can do hard things and that I'm not most people, right? And like, this is not putting people down. This is recognizing that when you choose to show up to a particular standard, a standard of excellence in the way that you um, kind of see the vision for how you want to show up in the world, like when you set that bar high, it's hard, right? And not everybody's going to be able to make it. Like that's kind of the point. That's kind of like the whole thing about it, right? Is that not everybody is willing to put in the work. So when I recognize that it is hard and I want to quit, I just say to myself, and this is the part where most people do quit because it is hard. And that's just the reality. And if you're not most people, figure it out. Find a way, make a way, right? Figure it out. So In that episode, I talked about the shame, but I also talked about the shift, right? And I said, up until then, up until now, we had been looking at reflections on the journey, right? I shared with you my values and how I was finding my flow and just sort of navigating the tough moments, the anxiety that was coming up, the doubt, the imposter syndrome, all these things. So it was reflection on the process. This is really when I was defining who is my creative self, like who is she, making room for her in my life. And I talked about passing the mic to her as she's been sort of one of the many versions of me that are sitting on the panel that is my life, right? And at this point, the questions that life um, is presenting to me, the creative in me wants to have the mic. She wants to answer those questions. And so leaning into that and what does that mean and defining her and really giving her life, my creative self. And now, having done that and laid a foundation for who she is, what her creative values are, her creative voice, what her mechanism, right? I've talked a little bit about how I've been writing, more on that coming up as well. So, spent season one really defining my creative self. And then I moved into doing my creative practice. And while I'm still, writing and doing that, I want to shift this series into inviting you into some of that, right? Like, so reflections on the process, now a glimpse into my process, and more specifically, sharing with you the practices that support my writing, right? So, one of those is daydreaming out loud. So, again, if you follow the channel, then I streamed, I think that was last Sunday. So, it would have been January 18th. And that live stream should be up. So, sharing the space where I daydream. This is where I allow my mind to expand and see things that I wouldn't typically see when I'm thinking sort of logically or rationally. This is getting into my imagination and getting to a place where I just allow myself to really see and think and feel big visions around a particular thing. And it's the big visions, but it's also the tiny details. It's really, really getting into the granular practice of what is this world that I'm creating. So when I think about writing, for instance, I'm creating a world. I'm creating characters who have whole lives and stories and experiences. And part of my writing practice is to really daydream those worlds and those places and those people and those experiences and those interactions and what are they wearing and how do they sound and all of those things. And so daydreaming is a huge part of my practice. So I'm inviting y'all into that with the monthly series that will happen on the new moon of every month. So we had it on the 18th of January. I think the new moon is on the 17th of February. So stay tuned for that. Um, how to reinvent yourself is literally me doing the steps, sharing my how to. Today's episode is the first of a sub series. So, how to reinvent yourself is its own series. And then a sub series within this is going to be creative sources, where I share with you the people and the works that are inspiring me, that are challenging me, that are expanding me, that are grounding me, right? Like, that are exciting me. Like, I share those works. And so this is the first installment of that sub series. And we're going to be unpacking my obsession with Ryan Coogler, who I've been watching. I have an interview on pause with him right now. It just dropped this morning from Proximity Media, which is his media company. And so I've been watching that. It's him and Michael B. Jordan being interviewed by one of the staff persons. I forget her name, but one of the staff persons from in Proximity Media. So I'm excited about sharing my obsession. I've been watching these interviews since the Kodak video. If you've not yet watched the Kodak video with Ryan Coogler talking about the film, the different film versions of the movie Sinners and how you can watch it and how that influences and affects your experience and what you're seeing and how it's going to feel and all those things, dynamic, phenomenal. It is really what kicked off this whole Ryan Coogler um, like deep dive that I've been on. Because let me say, I've been a fan for a very long time since Fruitvale Station, right? Like the first film that we had a chance to see, feature film that we had a chance to see by Ryan back in 2013. Um, quick story about that actually. So came out 2013. The reason I remember that explicitly is because I went to see it. It was only showing in limited theaters here in LA. So I went to see it. I believe it was a Saturday afternoon, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not sure exactly what day of the week it was, but I know it was July 13th. And the reason I know that is because I was driving into the movie theater and I was parking my car about to go in and watch this film. And I got a text from a friend saying that they had just announced, or they were about to announce, the verdict from the George Zimmerman trial. This is the man who murdered Trayvon Martin in Florida in 2012, I believe. The trial was in 2013, and um, I was pulling into the movie theater as they were about to announce the verdict. My friend texted me, they're about to announce it, so I turned it on the radio in the car because I wanted to hear it. So, of course, I heard the verdict, not guilty, and I was gutted. Like, I could not, I won't say I couldn't believe it, but I was gutted, right? And so I walk in the movie theater. I remember there were some protesters busted in. And so let me also set this context. The movie theater that I was seeing it in was inside of a shopping mall. So when you walk in the movie theater, you have the people who are in the concessions area buying popcorn and tickets and all the things for the movies. And then you have mall goers who are just shopping, in the retail stores and the food courts. And people were walking through. I remember I walked in and people were having their regular day as they should be, right? They probably hadn't even heard the news as it had clearly just dropped like moments before. So they probably had not yet heard the news. They had either been in the movies or been shopping or doing whatever. But I just remember feeling like the world was moving so quickly around me. And I was just frozen because I just felt like so out of place. Like, again, I knew consciously, like, these people probably don't even know, but what I felt was like, how are people just moving around? Like, what's going on? Don't y'all know? Like, it was such a disorienting position to be in. And then as I'm having this thought, a group of protesters busted in. Excuse me, this incense smells good, but the smoke is doing me in. Excuse me. So these protesters busted in and they started screaming about, everything that was happening. But of course, moviegoers were kind of confused because they didn't really know what was going on. So I left that area because the chaos was too much, and I went inside of the bathroom at the movie theater, and there was two elderly white women. They were probably like, I don't know, in their 70s, I would say. And they were inside of the bathroom, and one of them asked the other, uh, "Did you hear?" And she said, "Yes." And I somehow just intuitively knew that they were talking about the verdict. At this point, it was maybe 10 or 15 minutes past since it had been announced. So I somehow instinctively and intuitively knew that they were talking about the verdict because she didn't say it. She said, "Did you hear?" The other woman said, "Yes, I heard." And the first woman said, "You know what that means, right?" And the second woman said, "It's open season." And even as I'm saying that now, I can feel the weight of those words because I just remember I was standing at the sink because I just went in there just to kind of escape the noise of the concession area. So I just was in there just as a little, like, just duck off real quick. So hearing them say that, it was like, I couldn't, it was like, okay, so you do understand, like, you do understand what is happening, that this is not an isolated event, and this is not, some man who genuinely felt afraid for his life or his neighborhood. Like, this is something else, and you understand that. And it was like validating and crushing at the same time. So I'm going out because I'm meeting a friend for the movie. So I go out back into the lobby. It's calmed down. The protesters have left or been kicked out. I don't actually know, but they're not there. And we already have our tickets for the film. So we go inside. And what I will say before we move on with this episode is that when that film opens with the actual footage of Oscar Grant at the BART station, I am inconsolable. I mean, shaking and sobbing like this is my little brother or something. Like, I mean, I lost it, immediately lost it. And I just remember my friend who I went with trying to hold me, but also, I don't think he at the time was familiar with the case, Oscar Grant in particular's story. And I'm not even sure at that point if he had heard the verdict, even. I can't recall that detail, but I do recall him trying to hold and console me while I am in hysterics at this opening scene of the film. And then I went on to, of course, see the rest of the film, and it was just a beautiful, humanizing, intimate, and honest look into the life of a young man just trying to figure it out, like so many of us. And from a creative standpoint, I remember feeling this exhale of relief around not overly politicizing this story, not bastardizing it and making it, like it was just, here is a young man who is a father and he's trying to figure it out. And he's still, hanging with his boys and trying to get a job and living at home with his mom and got his girlfriend and they got this baby. And, you know, um, and the film was his last 24 hours of his life leading up to that fatal moment on the BART platform. So I say all that to say that was my introduction to who Ryan Coogler is as a director. And blown away, absolutely blown away by his ability to take something so tragic and such a big story. Um, and at a time in the middle of us dealing with a similar story, right? Remembering I had just heard the Trayvon Martin case and the George Zimmerman verdict, right? So it was like watching that and remembering the Oscar Grant story and then seeing the Trayvon Martin or the George Zimmerman, the George Zimmerman trial play out, like, and the timing of when it all had such a massive impact on me, and his creative ability to capture all of that energy and bring it down to something that felt like this person was somebody I see and talk to and kick it with every day. Um, and to just humanize it and make it feel so close to home was just beautiful. It was so beautifully done. And I've been a fan since then. But then fast forward to, because of course there's Black Panther and 1 and 2, right? And Creed. But then fast forward to 2025 when Sinners is about to come out. Now, let me set the scene for this because I somebody sent me no somebody said yes somebody sent me a clip of the Kodak video that was like on Instagram. I was like, this is interesting. I'm super curious. I love learning. I spent all day actually yesterday in preparation for today's live stream learning how to integrate some of the videos I'm going to share with you because I have some clips from some of the interviews that I've watched over the last 9 or 10 months of Ryan Coogler. So I'm going to integrate some of those videos. So I spent all day yesterday on this platform learning how to integrate those clips. I'm a huge curious person. I love to learn, even if it's information I may never use. Like, may never use it, but it's fascinating. So I watched the clip that somebody sent me. I was like, this is super fascinating. Found the whole video on YouTube. It's like 10 minutes. I ended up watching that video like 4 or 5 times back to back because I was just so blown away by it. And I was so intrigued by the way that Ryan Coogler, was teaching about the different types of film, the different types of camera and what that means for how it impacts the viewer and the whole experience, why he made certain choices specifically for this film and what dimensions he was trying to create with different cameras and different. I mean, it was just so fascinating. It was so fascinating that it hyped me up to go see the movie. I was like, I have to see it. And there was, I think, only 5 theaters playing it in this very specific type of 70 millimeter film and what that meant for the depth and how you would experience it. And I was like, oh, I have to find it. So I found the theater in LA that was playing it in this particular film, very limited. And I was like, I instantly was, look, I gotta go. But I was also like, because of all the different things that he discussed in this clip, I'm thinking, I want to see it. I'm going to see it like 4 or 5 times in one day, and I'm gonna see it at different places so I can see the different versions of it. This is my plan. So I called my friend who's also movies into it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to see Sinner, in 4 different theaters. And she was like, girl, I don't know about a horror film. And I said, what? I said, what do you mean? She was like, yeah, I don't really do horror like that. I'm like, what? And the thing is, in the Kodak video, he says that it's a horror. He tells us. But it doesn't really compute, like, because I'm so into what he's saying. Like, I hear him say that it's a horror, but I'm still not, like, as he's describing it, I'm not getting it. And I had not seen, so when I say this to her, I'm like, oh, it's a horror film. She's like, girl, what? You haven't seen the trailer? And I'm like, no, I haven't. I had not seen the trailer. But at this point, I am committed. I'm hooked. I'm going to see this movie. So now I don't even want to see the trailer because I also don't do horror. I am not a horror girl. Count me out. I don't want the gory. I don't want the blood. I don't want the jump scares. I don't want none of it. So when she tells me it's a horror, I'm kind of like, because I also don't like horror. But I'm 10 toes. I'm in it. I got to do it. Like, so now I don't even want to see. I don't even want to see it. I don't want to see the trailer. I don't want to know. I'll suck it up. I just got to see it. So I go, I see the film, phenomenal, all the things. But so that's what kind of kicked off this obsession, because now I see the film. Now I want to go back and watch all the other film, critics on the internet talk about it. I want to see, other people's reactions. So I'm deep in the threads. I'm everywhere, right? Like I'm everywhere because now I want to hear all the interpretations and all the, Easter eggs and what did you see and what did you catch and what did you notice and the meaning that we got out of it. It's so layered, right? The gender dynamics, the racial dynamics, the economic dynamics. There's historical context. There's the social, dynamics between like the church and the juke joint, and I mean, there's just so many layers. So I want to know it all. So now I'm deep in it watching this. But as this is happening, they're on their press run, all the cast and some of the crew. So now I'm watching their interviews and they're talking about it. And the more I watch these interviews and they're doing their press tours, the more I hear Ryan speak, the more I'm like, oh, okay, no, I'm into this guy. Like the way that he talks about his creative process, the way that he talks about his collaborators, the way that he talks about the cinema going experience for the audience, the way that he journeyed to filmmaking from football, like every single story he tells, I'm literally on the edge of my seat. Like he is such a phenomenal storyteller. It makes sense to me that one of the stories I've heard him tell a bunch of times, because people always ask about, from football to filmmaking, and he always talks about one of his teachers who read one of his creative writing pieces, called him into her office and asked him if he ever considered like filmmaking. And I can imagine that what she read, probably it was so easily translatable into visual pictures, because that's how he draws me in, at least, is the way that he tells stories about whatever. It could literally be tying his shoe. The way that he tells stories, the details that he includes, way he can create a feeling inside about a moment just by the words that he uses to tell the story. It just, for me, is like incredible. So the more I watch his interviews, the more I wanted to watch his interviews. And I started to go down the rabbit hole of not only Sinners interviews, but back years, around the Fruitvale Station time and around the Black Panther time and around, even the Creed time, which I don't really remember him doing a huge press tour around that. But, of course, it gets mentioned in a lot of his other interviews. So I've just been in a deep dive. Actually, the link to my playlist I've kind of put together, and it's not even all of them. I watched a lot of them, and some of them I just weren't so great. The questions weren't great, or whatever the reasons, I didn't love it. So I didn't include every interview that I've watched, but it's a pretty sizable list of the interviews that I've watched, and it's some of the ones that I really enjoyed for different reasons. Right? It's either the content of the interview, like what was shared, was really inspiring. Um, it's sometimes the vibe. One thing that's about him, aside from the storytelling, with Ryan Coogler, it's also the vibe, right? Like, he's so Oakland, he's so West Coast, and I don't care who he's talking to. I literally do not care. He has the same very grounded, very slow to speak, thoughtful. One thing that I love about him that is not true for all people. He's going to answer the question. Sometimes they'll throw a question and people just say what they want to say, not what they were asked. They just say, "This is the thing I want to say at this moment." He's going to answer the question every time. So there's just certain things about him that I really enjoy. So let's get into some of these clips. Let me say this. These clips, a lot of them, I recorded. I'm sitting here watching the interview and I'm just like, oh, let me capture this. So I might have captured it on my phone. I might have screen grabbed it. Who knows, right? So they're all over the place. And these are certainly not um, all the clips that I've saved for different reasons, right? But these are just some of the ones that stand out for me because it's less about the technical stuff, which again is fascinating to me, and I really appreciate learning. But for me, if I'm thinking about him as a muse, I'm looking at him, the creator, not necessarily his work, because that to me is an extension and expression of him, the creator, how he shows up to it, how he conceptualizes it, how he thinks about it, how he approaches it, how he structures it, those types of things. And I am always looking at and listening to cues that are going to give me insight into that. So these are some of the clips that I've recently snagged from interviews. I would say in the last couple of months that I've watched, and some of them in the last maybe even couple of weeks, to be honest. There's only, I think, a variety of about 3 different interviews in here, but let's get into some of these clips. So here is one that I appreciate. Yeah, let's get into this.
Okay, I feel like you're not going to like my last question, but I'm going to ask it anyway.
It's all good.
Would you rather have a movie gross $1 billion or win Best Picture?
You asking me that question?
Yeah, you've had a movie gross $1 billion, so you kind of know, and you might have a movie win Best Picture.
Oh my God. I don't know how to answer that, Lucas.
Is that a good question?
Yeah.
Is that one a good question?
He's asked better ones.
Yeah.
I mean, look. Making movies is incredibly hard. It's incredibly difficult. I've been blessed to have the opportunity to do this. I come from Oakland, California. You know what I mean? Like I said, nobody in my family was in the business. You know, so and I think it's one of the most incredible jobs in the world to have. So I feel blessed. I feel like I won an award every day I step on set and we get to call action. You know, and we get to rap and then come back the next day. So I'm the wrong person to ask if one incredible thing, a movie making $1 billion, which in a capitalistic way is nice, but in a cultural way, that means a lot of people went to go see the movie in the theater, or that you know, I don't know how many people are in the academy, 6,000. You know, like it's a very elite club that they thinking about your movie enough to say, hey, I like this enough to vote for it. That's
Right.
both of those things are incredible. So I wouldn't want to compare them. You know.
So that clip for me is really about his answer to that question, right? Which is there's the how much the movie grosses, which, as he mentioned, in a capitalistic way, it's great. So, right, it's great for the production companies, it's great for the movie houses, it's great for, right, all of that. But it also represents that a lot of people went to go see my movie, right? And the fact that he is able to think about those two things separately, I think, as an artist, there is a part of us that, you know, you kind of hear the starving artist narrative. And there's a part of us that kind of accepts that not everybody appreciates art and that the need to create it is oftentimes just more important than the need to have it validated by the outside world. And so to be able to navigate both of those realities and say, like, it is such a blessing to be able to make money as an artist and also make art that people care about. And I care and I can make a living and I can entertain people. And the three of those things aligning as an artist is rare. So his ability to name that in such a clear and like on the spot way, right? And when being asked that question, I think to me is a signal of where his values are and the way he understands the privilege that he's living right now, which I think is important. We all know what it's like to share a world with people who are not aware of their privileges, right? And how harmful that can be. And so when you have an artist of his caliber who is able to name that so articulately, I think that that informs how they show up to their work, right? And then he also named, like, hey, you know, getting awards, while there are people who are like, I don't care, these, you know, especially Black creators, right? Like, it's easy to say, like, oh, I don't care, these systems and these awards are not set up for us, they're not going to acknowledge us, they're not going to validate us. Yes, that may be true, and that's easy maybe to be said, but for him to be able to say, like, and also I'm a part of this, you know, I'm a part of this academy, for instance, that might acknowledge my art. And, you know, my peers, my colleagues, the people who have influence and decision making power in the industry that I'm in, for them to see and acknowledge and celebrate my work is also a blessing. So just his answer to that, how well rounded it was, to me, speaks again to the way that he thinks about and sees his work. And I really just appreciated his answer because he didn't juxtapose them. He actually expanded and allowed us to see sort of from many angles why all of those things are so rare. Um, but how he just also embodies that and inhabits that space over and over again, right? Like his films over and over again garner award season attention and grand audiences and, you know, box office smashes. Like, to do that over and over again out the gate is phenomenal, right? So I love that clip. Now I want to get into another clip that kind of is from earlier on, um, around, I believe, the Fruitvale Station time, where he's doing this interview. And there's a quick little moment, I'll share it and then we'll talk about it.
Same thing with filmmakers. You know, we make films about, we think about things that affect us emotionally, and we try to process them like that.
Anybody here a filmmaker? Want to be a filmmaker? Studying filmmaking? Okay.
Oh, imagine. That's really cool to be in a room full of filmmakers, man.
This is your competition eventually.
Not even, man. It's not competition. It's my family.
Yeah.
My people.
I love this clip, and I know the volume might have been a little bit low, so just in case you missed it, what essentially happened there is he was talking in that clip about Fruitvale Station, and similar to what I was just sharing earlier about what happened when he was really humanizing Oscar Grant in that film, and he was talking about sort of why that was so important to him. And as he mentioned, he was saying a lot of times when we're processing the stuff that's happening in the world around us as artists, we'll put that into our work. So he spoke about how musicians will put it into their music, painters will put it into their, their paintings, sculptures, etc. So he was saying as a filmmaker, it's a similar thing. Like part of my processing my emotions of the world that's going on around me is through my filmmaking and storytelling. And so he was talking about that. And they asked if there's any filmmakers in the audience. And he said, the guy said, these are your future competition. And Ryan said, not even. These are my family. And again, as artists, there's such a tendency to compare our work, right? To look at others, especially when you think about coming up in the game. You got to remember, this is his very first film, right? Or I should say feature film, right? And so when you're trying to claw your way into a very competitive industry, and it's even more competitive for people like you, right? Young Black men, who the spots are even more limited, right? So they would have you think in this world. When it was positioned to him like, oh, these are your competitors, he was like, what? Nah, immediately, these are my family. And that approach to creativity, that collaborative approach, this idea that we are in the room together, we understand the call to do this work, the challenge of doing this work, the beauty of doing this work, the privilege of doing this work, we understand that. And because we have that shared understanding, that makes you family, not competition. Like, and that thought process, and he carries that into his entire creative process. And the reason I'm saying that is because I've watched hours upon hours of interviews of his over the last 9 or 10 months, or whenever, however long it's been since Sinners came out. And one of the things that is consistent across every single interview is that he's going to give you a name. He's going to tell you a story, and he's going to make sure you understand that whatever he's created has come as a collective and collaborative effort, and that there are many hands in the pot, and there are many gifts at the core of what he's doing. And that collaborative nature and the way in which he speaks about his collaborators, to me, again, is a sign of one of his creative values that I think really allows him to make the art that he makes, right? Like, he understands his gifts. He understands both how grand they are, but also how limiting they can be. And how when he wants to see the vision for this world that he imagines in his mind coming to life, he has to really look to and lean on the gifts and talents of others. And part of that is he always talks about going to film festivals and watching movies. And I don't care who he's talking to about what, he always has a movie reference. He knows their work, and he's able to draw inspiration from all types of genres of film, from horror to comedy to drama to period pieces to, whatever it is. And all of that shows up. And I think it is that deep appreciation for movies to say, like, I want you to go out there and make your art. I want you to go out there and see the world that you envision come to life on a screen, big or small. And that doesn't feel like competition to me. That feels like we all get to contribute to the beautiful world of movie making. And again, that changes your experience of creating and your approach to creating when you really can appreciate and value the collaborative nature of it without looking to your fellow filmmaker peers or whatever your creative, whatever your art medium is, looking to your peers as competition or as someone that you have to compare yourself to, right? Because inherent in competition is comparison. if I'm competing against you for a spot to be able to make a film, I have to compare my work to yours and say, who is more likely to get this spot? Am I better? Right. And so inherent in competition is comparison. And I think, as I've shared, even here on YouTube, I think I shared a short recently around this sort of idea that not only is comparison the thief of joy, but it also is the killer of creativity. The moment you start looking at your work through the lens of what you think about somebody else's work, you miss the mark and you lose the plot. And so his ability to say, like, these are not my competition, these are my peers, these are my family, I think is an underlying value and approach to communicating that to me seems like it's much more supportive of creating big art. And I'm glad you agree. I'm glad you agree, Carrie, because yes, this is how we get our best art, when we allow ourselves to be our best creative self, right? Like the art can only be as big or as good as the artist. And if you shrink yourself by comparing yourself or competing with other people, you've already diminished the quality of what you can put out there, right? And so his ability to see himself in a family of filmmakers, I think, is the starting point for art that does what all his movies have done since the beginning, starting at Fruitvale Station until now. Right. And so I wanted to share that clip because that's part of what I'm taking away from that brief moment. Now I want to move into this next clip. He was recently on Good Hang with Amy Poehler. So I'm going to share this clip.
You were loving those characters in real time.
Yeah.
That's what it felt like.
I
It
appreciate
felt
that.
like a loving gesture in real. And
Appreciate
we
that.
felt that when we saw it. It was so beautiful,
Right on.
and so beautifully shot. Just the way the camera moves.
I mean, it was everybody working like in concert with each other. We brought in Akaman Jones, who's a choreographer, works a lot with Usher Raymond. The choreographed like Pitch Perfect, and he did all the Panther films. I actually met him through Chadwick Boseman. Rest in peace. And every department was in on that, like from Hannah Biegler to our visual effects supervisors, Michael Rowley and James Alexander. They're all Archipar cinematographer. Obviously, you had a brilliant steady cam.
Yeah, the steady cam work was incredible.
Yeah, it's a kid named Rennie, Haitian American kid, ex-football player.
His
I think he
shoulder
played
must
at
have
NIU.
been hurting in that one.
He used to be strong dude, man, and sharp. And everybody had to work together. The actors, the incredible dancers. Ruth Carter with our costumes. And
beautiful.
And it was like that was the most team effort of everything that we did. That scene, as well as is I used to call like the twin counterpart, which is the step dancing scene that happens a little bit later in the film.
It's so beautiful. And
Again, so as I mentioned, right, you heard him dropping names, telling stories, really speaking to and amplifying the collaborative nature. She was asking specifically about the very popular scene out of Sinners, what they call the surreal montage, which is the scene where Sammy is singing and we see the interplay across the generations and cultures of the various dancers, dance styles, and musics, etc. And so he's talking about that scene and what kind of went into the creation of it and the telling of that story and why it felt important, especially at that point in the film. And I especially love the story that he tells about their Steadicam guy. He says he's a Haitian American kid who's an ex-football player. Even that, right? Like when you think about a movie set, when there's hundreds of people moving around, not just your cast, but your crew, right? And you have consultants, you have all kinds of stuff going on, and that he would know his Steadicam person, not just for the work that he does and the job, right, and the responsibility that he has on set, but he clearly knows him as a person. Like, you used to play football, and your family is from Haiti, and so this speaks to the time that he invests in getting to know the people that he's working alongside, and that they're not just a means to an end for a vision that in his mind, but that he really respects, appreciates, and values their contribution to making this vision come to life. And he humanizes them in the same way he humanizes his characters, right? Like it's just something that is a part of, it seems to be based on what I watched, something that is just a part of his character, that he really does see and appreciate and value human beings. Um, and when they collaborate, it is really an opportunity for everyone to flourish. He actually says in the most recent interview that I was watching earlier today that just dropped on his In Proximity podcast, he talks about how when they were on set watching Sinners, and I posted actually clips about this in my Instagram stories. If you're catching this live now, on the day that it's dropping on the 26th, you'll probably still see that in my stories. But he's making coffee, and he talks about how he would take this espresso machine with him on set while they were watching or making the film, sorry, and how he would make coffee for the cast and crew. And again, these sound like silly moments to pull out of hours upon hours of watching somebody do interviews, but these are the moments that show me or demonstrate to me who he is as a person, right? Because I can get on and sort of talk about all the great work that I've done or all the technical things that it took or whatever other things, right? But these quiet moments of traveling with an expert, when you got all this stuff going on, to say, and there's I'm sure, a thousand coffee shops between, wherever, but to say it is so important to me that I make coffee for my cast and crew, that I'm going to travel. And it's not I'm not talking about a little coffee maker. This is a big old espresso machine. I'm talking about huge. And on the interview, they call it industrial. It's not, but that's how big it is. Point is, when you make it a point, when you set the intention and when you put forth the effort to travel with this big machine, because it is important to you to be able to make coffee for your cast and crew. You, the director and the writer of this film, who's responsible for bringing this whole world to life and managing all the people who are going to play a part in that. When inside of all of that, you say, don't forget the coffee maker, because I want to be able to, when they step into my office and we meet and we have chats about the script or about the shoot schedule or whatever we're going to talk about, I want to be able to make them coffee. And what he specifically and explicitly said is, I really enjoy it because it's like an act of service. I went through all this trouble to pack and travel with a massive espresso machine to come to New Orleans from Los Angeles while we're shooting this film for however many days, because I want to be able to make my cast and crew coffee when they come into my office and we chat. That sets the intention to slow down, to get to know each other and create space for family, for bonding, for relationship building, not just delegating tasks and handing out directives. I'm saying, you, the person, sit down, have a sip, let's chat, let me get to know you, let's spend some time, let's slow down. When you understand that a film is on a budget and they have a shoot tight schedule and all those things are happening, for a director to prioritize that, again, speaks to their character, speaks to their values, speaks to their approach to the creative process. And it's hard for me to imagine that somebody puts that much thought into how they show up on a set. And you can imagine how much thought goes into everything before that. He talks a lot in these interviews about his process, how he runs the script by his wife, and his business partner, Ryan Coogler, over and over and over and over again until she gives him the green light. And he said the same is true for Sinners, that he showed her a first draft and she was like, mm-mm. And he went back, I think, a couple more times before she finally said, okay, this might be something worth taking now to the next level, which is then to our other partners, right? Which is, the other people that are part of the Proximity Media team. So I'm sharing that to say the way he values and appreciates the perspectives and the contributions of the people around him is really what shapes the work. He will be the marquee name. He will be the person who draws the crowd. And forevermore, I can imagine that whenever somebody says this is written or directed or has anything to do with Ryan Coogler, masses and people will show up in droves to witness whatever has been created. And I can say that confidently from what we've seen thus far. I, for one, have seen centers in the movie theaters at least 5 times, and it's about to come. It's back in theaters now for a limited run. And if you don't think I have tickets for that, you're crazy, because I do. Okay, so um, when I've never done that for any movie, never have I ever seen any movie in the movie theater more than once, let alone 5 or 6 times. And I'm going to show up every time. Okay. And one, because the film has so many layers, there's so much to see and there's so much nuance. But every time I watch these interviews and I learn something more about them, I want to go back and see how that shows up. So again, in watching these interviews, I've been watching, by default, I've been hearing a lot of Michael B. Jordan as well, and him talking about what he did to prepare as Smoke and Stack, right? Like the shoes too small for Stack, too big for Smoke. The backstory of who they are as human beings and what happened in their lives before we meet them on screen. Hearing that, right? Just learned today. Today, I'm still learning new things. Today, I just learned that there was apparently a period of time where they were separated from each other and they were each in their respective relationships with Annie and Mary. And during that time, that the twins, Smoke and Stack, were apart. Didn't realize that. But it speaks to the relationship that Stack has with Mary, because Smoke doesn't like it because of the way that they were raised by Mary's mom when their mom was dead after they killed their dad. So it's like you get this backstory that we don't see on screen, but that informs so much of what we do see on screen with those interactions, that when I learn these things watching these interviews, I want to go back and watch the movie again. And it's that kind of creating that is so deeply human. It's not just about the story that I'm creating on the screen. It's about the story that informs the story that we're creating on screen, and how that makes the character so full and so human and so real and so relatable. But it's ironically, they're so specific, right? Like I have this interview paused right now. They're showing the video clip of the woman who Michael B. Jordan used to inspire the dialect for one of the twins. He would listen to this sound bite of this woman speaking and then try to embody that dialect in his speaking voice for one of the twins. That kind of work, which I know is not unique to this, right? People have these types of reference lines and things all the time for characters. But my point is, when you go that deep into a character, Michael B. Jordan spoke about writing in journals, about certain interactions as these characters to really make them real in his body and in his experience, and then bring that to the screen. It's the reason why he was able to play the twins as two completely different people, and we could see like this is one person. We know that this is all Michael B. Jordan, but they are very clearly two different people when you're watching the film. And learning these kinds of insights and these types of things really helps to just support more of that. And it's what brings me back to the work, and it's what makes me really feel inspired by Ryan Coogler as a creative, as a storyteller. His ability to take very specific stories down to how you speak and how you walk and how you move in your clothes and where you hold your trauma in your body, and all these very, very specific and nuanced things, and get them to a point where they're so human that it becomes universal, that it becomes relatable, that you are able to see yourself. That is such an ironic interplay that comes from how a character is written and how the development of that character is approached throughout a story arc, and the relationship between the person who writes the character, the person who directs the scene, and the person who's acting it out, which then kind of speaks to the relationship between Michael B. Jordan and Ryan Coogler as a team. As we know, they've done lots of their films together. So this next clip is kind of talking about that. And this is Ryan Coogler sharing a bit about why that's important for him to have consistent collaborations with his team over and over again. So let's watch this clip.
For directors, a lot of directors have an actor that they get to kind of, you've had a few, but like an actor that you get to kind of keep working with and working stuff out with. Why is that helpful to work with the same person more than once?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's great, man. Like it's funny because it actually comes back to football for me, because I play receiver, and I play with a lot of different quarterbacks. You know, especially in college, and it was tough because I never felt like I found my rhythm with one person. You know, and that's so important. Like I think finding a rhythm is like a it's like fundamental to I think to achieving greatness. You know, so it's phenomenal to have found an actor who's so talented, you know, gifted, ambitious, you know, because Mike is constantly trying to push himself and get better at his craft, professional. He's also like a good person, you know, like he's like when you're doing a movie with him, if he's number one on your call sheet, you know that you're gonna have a safe set for people. You know, you're gonna be able to do great work without making people's lives miserable. He's gonna treat people with kindness. He got nothing to prove, so he learns the PA's name, he learns the camera operator's name. The same way he'll know the producer's names, you know.
Right.
And that is something that I think permeates the set, like at a foundational level. I've been very blessed in that.
Well,
you know,
one could argue too that you that's also what you transmit, give off. That's your station. Like your channel is attuned to that, so people take their cue from you.
I try to,
you know.
But it's great to have Mike there to amplify it. You know, because that's who he is. You know, and he's.
So that clip is again a little bit of a closer look at the value and importance of having consistent collaboration with the same people and over. And one of the things that has come up in several of the interviews is they talk about having this shorthand, right? We all know what it's like to develop a relationship with people, and the closer you get, the more you have sort of nonverbal communication. You start to pick up on each other's tendencies and certain things, and you just kind of create this way of communicating with one another that you need fewer and fewer words and becomes more and more intuitive. And again, in a creative situation where you have that with somebody that you trust because you have been working with them for a long time and you really respect, value, and appreciate their craft. What he said about Michael B. Jordan is, he's really good at what he does and he works really hard. Like he wants to be better. So I can trust you because we have this long standing working relationship and I know that you want to be better. So I also respect you. I respect your approach to the craft. So not only do I trust you as a collaborator, I respect you as a collaborator. And then the third thing that he mentioned is how aligned they are in their character, right? So again, speaking about the importance of your collaborators, not just being good at what they do, but what he said is that he's a good person. And what I love about what Amy said is she reflected back to him like, well, you are too, right? Like you show up with that same reverence for the work and for the people that you're working with. And what he's able to identify is correct. And so I work with people who mirror that back to me because when we share values, we are standing on a foundation that's much stronger to create from. Right? So I trust you as a collaborator. I respect you as a collaborator. And we share values as collaborators that allow us to meet in the middle and create from a place where we're aligned on what is the environment we are setting here so that other people, right? As the director, I have a responsibility. He spoke about it being, football, right? Inspired by football. As a director, I have a responsibility. I am like the coach of this team, right? But my leading actor, my number one on the call sheet, if you will, he's the team captain, right? So as the coach and captain of this entire team, we have to have our vision aligned for the rest of everyone else to be able to show up and play their part so we can win. That's a very sports, football, any team sport really, mindset and perspective to have. And that's a very intentional approach to the creative process. So when you're talking about building a team, you're talking about collaborating with people. It's not just that they're good at what they do, but you have to trust them, you have to respect them, and you have to be aligned with them. Because when you do that, then you're putting yourself in a position to then create from your highest place, right? You're not trying to control and micromanage what everybody else is doing because you trust them to have their part, right? You don't shrink your vision because you know that because you respect them as artists and you expect them to grow into the task and the challenge. So you can show up with your big vision and you can respect and trust them to show up with their best effort. And because you're aligned, then the way you run the experience of creating and the process of that begins to be an expression and an extension of how you're showing up to the space. When you're kind, when you create safety was another thing he said. He said, when he comes in and knows everyone's name, when Ryan Coogler was speaking about Michael B. Jordan showing up to set, knowing everyone's name, treating the PA in the same way that he treats, the higher, the directors and whoever else, right? Like, when you come in with that and everyone feels respected and everyone feels valued and everybody feels heard and seen and their ideas, many of the interviews, Delroy Lindo, I actually saw Delroy Lindo and Wumi Basaku interview in person here in LA. And one of the things that they both said was that throughout the process and even after, Ryan Coogler consistently asked for their input and feedback, like genuinely, honestly wanted to hear their thoughts. And that one of the stories in particular that really hits home for me because of the way the scene landed for me when I saw the film. So in Sinners, if you've seen it, there's a scene where they're driving down the street, Stack, Slim, which is Delroy Linder's character, and then Sammy, which is, the young singer, they're in the car. They're driving, I think, to the juke. Yeah, they have to be driving to the juke joint. And they see a chain gang. And then from that moment, Slim tells a story about when Sammy asked him, did he know those guys? He said he knew most of them. And he kind of tells a story about this horrendous thing that happened. And in that storytelling, he goes from wailing, like crying, to singing. And this scene is two things. One, it was apparently improvised. Like, that was not necessarily written. It just happened and they all went with that moment. Beautifully executed. Could not tell at all that was not written on the page. But the second thing is that apparently there's a version of this film where that scene wasn't in it. And when they saw a screening, the cast, and Ryan asked for their feedback, one of the things that Delroy Lindo requested was to have that scene reinstated. And you see, they did it. And it was a beautiful scene, very impactful, very powerful scene. And it's those kinds of things when I hear those stories about, a director who has a vision for the film that he's creating. And he says in a lot of his interviews, there's the film that I write, and then there's the film that y'all see, right? And what happens when the actors get a hold of it, and when the costume department gets a hold of it, and all these other departments, when they all get a hold of it, is it becomes something very different from what I might have seen. But if it works, and if it makes the world more rich and more real, then I go with it. That's a level of humility that some leaders don't have. Some leaders will force their vision, even if it means not turning out the best work because they want it to be what they saw, and they don't allow it to become what it could be when they allow other people with their gifts, talents, skills, perspective, insight, etc., to shape and mold what it turns out to be. So those kinds of stories, those kinds of moments, again, give me insight into the character of this person. We're talking about somebody who is not only a great creative in their own right, but they're a great collaborator, which can recognize the greatness in other creatives and bringing that together in a way that requires a level of humility, but also a level of clarity. Because I hear your idea, but if I don't have a clear picture of what I'm creating, I don't have anything to measure it against. So I have to have some groundedness and some clarity into my own vision, but I also have some appreciation from some value into what you bring to be able to be humble enough to say, okay, I didn't think of that, but it makes sense, and it makes the vision that I did think about this much, fill in the blank, more rich, more depth, more, the more emotion, whatever is there, and I can appreciate and integrate that without feeling threatened as a leader, right? And that level of humility and that dance and that interplay between clarity of vision, but also collaboration with your team is a special and unique gift that I think, as a creative, telling stories visually, again, is what lends itself to some of the brilliance that we've seen about his work. Um, so we've talked about, his reverence for the craft. We've talked about, through that, what we talked about with the Kodak video. We talked about his reverence for the craft. We've talked about his gratitude for the level at which he is able to really perform his art, right? And that's large audiences, big budgets, award recognition, and all those things, not from the perspective of validation, but from the perspective of affirmation. Like, I know that I'm creating art that is worthy of and telling stories that are worthy of. And so when people come out in droves and spend their hard earned money and my peers recognize that work, that is just affirming what I know and believe and why I show up to this work with the level of excitement and humility that I bring. And it's also why I understand the value and appreciate the opportunity to collaborate with other great minds. It is also why I deeply build relationships with these people, because I want to know who they are and make sure that we're aligned, not just in what we're able to do in the work, but who we are as people and our values and our characters and what matters to me. And the effort that he puts into showing up to those spaces, and, as he said, serving coffee, right, an act of service to my cast and my crew, in a space where we have an opportunity to really deepen our relationship and connection in service of this vision that we're collaborating on, and whatever the project is. Ooh, excuse me. Wow, sorry. Sorry about that. It's a good thing I have my water. But yeah, excuse me, I'm getting over that flu that's been going around. But so these are some of the things that have come up so far in some of the clips that we have watched, and the things that, again, if we're talking about unpacking my obsession with Ryan Coogler, it's not just that he creates great art, because we know that, we've seen that. I think we all, to some degree, collectively agree that this is what's happening. But I've been wanting to kind of get underneath, or I can't even say that that was my intention. I came in just curious as a person who was in love with the movie and wanting to know all the things I could know about it. But the more I watched, the more I got to know and see who he is as a person, not just as a creator, and how that informs his art. And again, based on what he has shared and the things that he has offered, I have learned so much about how to show up to work, the things that I want to embody. Um, and how that informs the worlds that he creates and the characters that he gives us and the stories that we get to observe and witness through his writing and storytelling. So I want to end on this final clip. It's a bit of a longer clip, but it's one of my favorites for a number of reasons, because I do think that it kind of is an embodiment of all the things that we've talked about, apart from the collaborations. I don't think he talks much about that in this particular clip. But this is an older interview around the Fruitvale Station time, and there's a woman who asks a very emotional question. It's really the way that he holds space for her, and it takes a bit of an unexpected turn towards the end. And I just really appreciate how he navigates that whole thing, because I think, again, it's an embodiment of who he is as a person. And so much of that, I think, is what allows him to show up the way that he does as a creative. So let's get into this last clip. As I mentioned, it's a bit of a longer one, but I wanted to close on this one because it really is just such an endearing moment. There's so many things that happen. So let me just share it.
We're way over time. Last word, right here.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I just wanted to tell you, this is the first summer talk that I've been to, and I wanted to come and hear you talk about your film.
I'm sorry. I'm a 58-year-old black woman, and I've watched black men die all my life. And by the police, too. So I didn't think I'd be able to see your film. I am going to go to be supportive. I think it's important that you're making a film that involves us as human beings because, we're the ones that have to make these films, and very often they don't get financed because it's not the way we're seen. And I know this from speaking to older filmmakers who said, well, they wouldn't finance it because they said black people don't do that. So thank you for wanting to make this film. I'll go see it, even though I know I'm going to be crying. And I just want to ask what the budget was and your format that you shot in.
Are you from New York?
Southern California.
Southern California.
Southern California.
That's got to be the best Q&A. Thank you for your comments, for real. Our budget was under $1 million, and our shooting format was oh my gosh, one of my classmates sitting behind you. I'm sorry, I got ADD. Our shooting format was Super 16. We shot with the Arri 416 Super 16 camera. It was from Arri CSC right here in New York. We shot on Kodak film stock called 7219. It's 500 tungsten stock. What's up, Nick?
Fruitvale Station opens tomorrow. It is an emotional film. Ryan Coogler is a very talented filmmaker, and you all gave him your word, as hard as it might be to watch the movie. There's a lot of beauty in this movie, and you all gave him your word that you would go see it this weekend. So you got to hold true to that promise.
Man, thank you guys so very much for coming and for sharing your thoughts and asking your questions. It means the world to me. It really does. And I hope all of you filmmakers, man, go out and make movies, 'cause I can't wait to watch them.
I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm extra. Maybe I'm putting a lot on it, but I really do. I just feel such a strong magnetic energy towards him and his whole presence. That clip, the way he held space for that woman, her emotions, and allowed her to speak, right? And you heard at the beginning of the clip, the guy says, we're way over time, right? And so, it suggests, again, we're in this sort of media storm, doing a press tour for this film that's out, all this, you got appointments, you got to be here, there, you're showing up on, this show and that interview and this panel and on this stage, all these things are going on. So when you have that happening and somebody comes and they have this emotional breakdown and this moment of really heavy and hard emotions to carry, and they're expressing that vulnerably in this open space, this public forum, in front of however many people were sitting in that audience, right? And for him to hold the space the way that he did, and just that moment of holding her, but also appreciating her, right? When she's like, I didn't think I was going to be able to do it, but I'm going to do it because I want to support you. And how he kind of embodies, as somebody, as a psychologist who watches for emotions, right? I'm always, when people are speaking or even listening, I'm watching for how their body is responding to what is showing up in the moment, because even when the words say a particular thing, the body will tell the truth. And so I'm watching the way that he's responding to her and holding space for her pain and her all the things that she spoke about, right? As a 58-year-old Black woman who has watched Black men be killed by police throughout her life, holding the heaviness of that while also holding the lightness and the joy of, but I see and appreciate your art and the telling of this story, and I want to show up and support you. And being able to hold space for both of those truths to unfold at the same time is not easy to do. And his ability to do that in that moment on the spot like that, I think speaks volumes for how he moves through life and his own capacity to be present with big emotions, which a lot of people don't have. A lot of people shut down and clam up, right, around big emotions, especially the big emotions of other people, right? We get uncomfortable when people start crying. This is why we tell babies, it's okay, don't worry, right? It's fine. Right? We do that because we don't really have the capacity. We don't really have a lot of practice sitting with big emotions. So the way that he was able to hold that woman's emotions, I think was incredible. And then when she took the quick pivot after that, very heavy admission of emotions, and then was just like, what was the budget and what did you shoot on, was like an unexpected turn, and his ability to go with that even and laugh and hold the space and respond to her question and all that. And then he sees his friend in the background and he's like, oh, my boy. And like just that very regular moment of like, I forgot I'm the subject on the stage. I saw my friend and my mind was like, friend. And he, the admission, I got ADD. And like, just there's so much in that clip that for me, again, that kind of presence with human emotion, human interaction, and to hold space for that, to be aware of that, to be able to transmute that and transcend that and to jump in and out of that, right? I see my friend, but I'm right back to answering your question. I'm right back to addressing the audience. I'm right back being present to what this is. But oh, what's up, Nick? Like there's so much going on, and his ability to kind of hold all of that and be present with my friend is here. I'm holding your emotions. I'm answering your question. I'm present with what I feel. I'm also thinking about this audience, all of those different things, and to jump in and out and around those things so seamlessly, um probably is, as a result of the ADD that he named, right? I don't know if that's diagnosed or if that's just him saying that. I would imagine it is, because he's actually said it across several interviews. He's mentioned being on the spectrum and all these different things, and so I'm imagining that these things are formal diagnoses. But even if they're not, however he's identifying himself and recognizing some of his behavioral tendencies and all of that, and his capacity to do that and wrangle it, I would imagine serves him so well on a set when he's managing, the actors and the crew and the story and the this and the that and the, making sure that we stay on budget and on time. And there's so many things happening. I'm sure he has support with managing all those things, but his mind being able to manage all that and to still be fully present in the experience of what is going on around him, such that he can notice his friend and speak to the audience and be present with her emotions and answer the question and do all of those things. That to me is the magic of Ryan Coogler, and it is a part of what I feel drawn to when I watch his interviews, when I learn from him as a creative, when I think about how I want to show up to my creative spaces and thinking about how I create worlds, how I create characters, how I interact with collaborators, all of those things that I've learned from watching him that cause me to reflect on my own journey and to think about or refine how I'm approaching certain things is why Ryan Coogler is a muse of mine. And so, as I mentioned, I've watched hours upon hours of interviews over the last several months. I've seen all of his films, and these are just a few clips that just kind of stood out for me that I just happened to be looking through my phone and I found that I had. But I linked in the comments, or in the description of this video, my playlist for some of the videos that I have watched, some of my favorites of all the interviews that I have watched. This is this that I've shared with you, and for so many more reasons, is really what makes Ryan Coogler one of my muses. And as I mentioned, this episode is the kickoff of a new sub series inside of How to Reinvent Yourself called Creative Sources, where I'm going to be talking about my muses, and that's going to be the art and their makers. So we're going to be covering, in no particular order, but certainly in upcoming episodes, there will be the Kendrick Lamar episode, because if you know me, then that does not shock you at all. Honestly, he could have been first, but I need time. I need time to like organize my thoughts, because if you think I am Ryan Coogler obsessed, get ready. Okay? Because I'm on another level when it comes to Kendrick. And again, it's for some of the similar reasons, and so we'll get into that. We're gonna do an episode on Jasmine Sullivan's Hotels album, because do I even have to? I mean, the storytelling, the narrative, the musical styles that are, I mean, it just, she did her big one with that. So we'll be dissecting that, maybe not dissecting, but speaking about why, because really what this is the Creative Sources has been me revisiting some of the works that I keep coming back to over and over and over and over again, and just being like, okay, what is it? What is it about this work that keeps me coming back? So it'll be Lauryn Hill, The Miseducation of Lauryn Hill. We're going to talk about that album, because that's something I keep coming back to. We're talking about almost 30 years now, and I'm still listening to the album like it just came out, right? So there's certain projects that keep me coming back over and over and over again. There's certain artists that you could just say their name. I don't care what it is. I'm signing up. I'm showing up. I don't care, right? Like, that's just what it is. And so I've been, in my practice as a creative, I've been revisiting some of these works that I keep coming back to and asking myself why. What is it about this work that keeps me coming back? And really trying to extract what it is and think about what that means for me as a creative, and my creative voice, in the ways that I am sharing and offering what I have into the world. How do these works that have inspired me, that keep calling me back, that won't let me go, how do these works support and inspire my journey into my own creative vision in life? So that is what this Creative Sources sub series will be about. And as I mentioned, we're going to be kind of dipping this in throughout, in addition to inviting you into some of my other practices, like the Daydreaming Out Loud series, which will happen on the new moon of every month, where we will set intentions by daydreaming about a particular topic. So far, we've talked about what does freedom look like. We've talked about what does safety and connection look like. Stay tuned for next month, as we're going to explore more topics. But again, we're daydreaming around what do those things look and feel like? How do we put ourselves in the center of these visions related to these topics, and really allow ourselves to feel and imagine those things as real, and get into that more deeply? I think that everything starts with being able to see it first in your mind's eye before you can create it. So that's what the Daydreaming Out Loud series is about. And I'm going to introduce a new series coming up, as a matter of fact, this Friday, this is not June. Watch out. Slow down. This is January. This is January 30th, 6:30 p.m. right here on YouTube Live. January 30th, 2026, just for archive purposes. 6:30 p.m. Pacific time, right here on YouTube Live. We are going to stream a very new series called Seen and Known. Okay, I told you I was going to be in these internet streets for 2026. I'm switching to streaming because that just feels more accessible to me. Again, if you've been following this journey, you might recall that in the very first episode of this series, How to Reinvent Yourself, I spoke about my creative values and their honesty, and sustainability is the second one, and then that my art is full of emotions. Sustainability has two prongs. It's sustainable in the process, meaning can I sustain and keep up with and be consistent in the creative process? And can I create a process that for me feels like I can sustain it, right? Like I'm not like I'm chasing something, not like I'm burning out and overwhelmed, but that I'm creating from a place of ease, because my process and the way that I've designed it is sustainable. So for me, streaming feels much more at ease than trying to pre-record and edit and then post once a month. Hopping on and streaming feels much more accessible. I just need to make my notes and be prepared to hop in here. So that's one part. The other part is that sustainability is that the art I create itself, meaning is sustainable. Like it will last throughout time. And that and even, the third part might even be like environmentally sustainable, right? um and that the art that I create will be sustainable in that manner as well. When we talk about, the use of AI in creation, for instance, that is not very sustainable because of the way that that uses our water reserves. And so I really am working to minimize the amount of those types of tools that I use, which is another reason why I think these types of interactions are more sustainable. Not to mention, I get to interact with y'all in real time. So for those of you who are here in the room, I appreciate the comments and all the things. But yeah, so this is what you can expect moving forward. Those 3 series for now: How to Reinvent Yourself, Daydreaming Out Loud, and Introducing Seen and Known, coming soon later this week. Those are the 3 ways that you can find me here on YouTube. You can also find me on Instagram. That's where I'm posting in terms of social media over there. I'm at Joy Hearts, JoiHearts. Of course, I'm Hey Dr. Joy here on YouTube. You can text Hey Dr. Joy to 323-629-8508 to join our text community. We are doing some behind the scenes journeying around what it means to reclaim connection and re-enter community. And there's a lot of people saying they want and need community, but I think most of us are out of practice of what it means to be in community. If you want to have a village, you have to be a villager. And what does that mean to show up with all of our vulnerability, with all of our openness, with all of our honesty, with all of our challenges, with all of our joys, with all of our successes, with all of our failures, all of those things that make us who we are? What does it mean to show up to spaces and to own all of that and to find safety and connection through all of that as well? So you can join the text community, and we have weekly prompts and we're doing exercises. And as we get into some of the live events and things, you will be getting the first updates there. As a matter of fact, we have a live update. We have a live event coming this Thursday. If you're in the LA area, I will be at Pillar. Follow me on Instagram. I will be sharing the updates about that probably beginning tomorrow. So stay tuned. Follow me again on Instagram for those updates. The upcoming event is this Thursday, January 29th, 2026 at Pillar in Leimert Park, Los Angeles. We are doing unfinished business. This is where we were bringing unfinished projects from 2025 or even before that. Any unfinished projects that you have that you want to revisit, and more specifically that you need some insight, some inspiration, some feedback, you need some support, some accountability, whatever you need to help you push forward and continue to create that, to revisit those works, to erase the shame that often comes with having unfinished projects, bring those back to life and create in community, to find the clarity, connection, and confidence that you need to follow through. So unfinished business is happening this Thursday for those who are in the LA area. Again, follow me on Instagram to find the details for that. So that is what I have going on in this world. I've got my digital things going on. Oh, you can also find me a couple more things. 2 more series. One on Instagram. Again, you want to follow me there. I have a series with my friend Stevan. We are doing unpopular opinions. This is where we share our hot takes about some of the things that are happening, not necessarily in pop culture, but just societally. Like, meaning, like, what are some of the cultural norms that we've accepted that maybe aren't so great, and we need to question them, we need to challenge them, and maybe even release and unlearn them, right? So unpopular opinions is really about challenging notions that we've sort of generally accepted as the norm, but we may need to revisit and reconsider. So that is unpopular opinions. That happens on Instagram Live with my friend Stevan Lewis. Shout out to him. We are streaming next Monday, February 2nd, 2026 at 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So again, if you follow me on Instagram, you'll be live there for that. And last but not least, Hello Human. Hello Human is a podcast that is something that was born of my brain, had an idea. It's really an extension kind of how to reinvent yourself, which is how do we do that in a world that is increasingly digital? How do we reinvent ourselves? What does that even mean? In a world that is increasingly digital. So Hello Human is sort of me grappling with that question from different perspectives and different angles and offering tools for how do we connect to and stay grounded in our humanity in a world that is evolving and becoming more digital. And we're particularly uncertain about what is even real anymore with the use of AI and what is happening here. So how do we hold on to our humanity? How do we stay connected to our truth? And how do we navigate this increasingly digital world? So Hello Human is a podcast where I explore with my co-host and my colleague and my friend, Aaron Jones. Aaron is a classmate from grad school, and he's also a therapist. So we put our clinical hats on a little bit, and we talk about what are some of the things that we can do to stay grounded in this digital world. So that's all that I have going on. I have a lot happening, lots of projects, but in the background, I'm still writing. And as I mentioned, next month, we're going to celebrate 1 year of this series, How to Reinvent Yourself. And in that celebration, I want to kind of go back and comb through some of the valuable lessons that I've learned in this year, both in my journey of becoming a creative, but also in working on this platform, YouTube. I know many people are curious about and interested in jumping on here and starting to build. It is a slow build, it is a tedious process. But when you're clear about your why, your mission and vision, it's easy to show up and say what you got to say and do what you got to do. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. I'm going to share some of the lessons that I've learned and some of the valuable insights that I've gleaned and the wisdom that I'm taking away. And I'm also going to introduce a new opportunity for you to join me on the journey. So stay tuned for that. It's going to be coming up in February right here on YouTube Live. So make sure you're following, make sure you're subscribed, make sure your notifications are on, make sure you're checking in, make sure you're following me on Insta so you can hear the updates when I get ready to go live. Make sure you join the text community so you can get all of the direct links and all the things to be present. You know, all of that is happening. I want to make sure that you are connected here. We are building a world slowly but surely. The different facets and different perspectives and different angles and different places to live and be and exist and learn and grow and heal together in this world. So I am grateful for your presence. I'm grateful for your input. I'm grateful for your feedback. And I'm grateful for whatever will come of this space and whatever we get to do, be, and have together. So that will conclude this episode of How to Reinvent Yourself. Thank you so much for being present. And if you watch the playback, don't forget to share your comments. I'd love to hear what you think about some of these clips and some of these ideas that I've shared about my obsession with Ryan Coogler. Okay. And so that's all. Until next time, I'll see you soon.